Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Susan Houssaye, and I am the career advisor for SoPA here at Tulane. And today we are going to talk about professionalism. So I wanted to start off telling you a little bit about myself. My background is in recruiting. So I did hiring for some big law firms in New Orleans and also in New York City. And also, I did recruiting for a tech company in New Orleans. So I was the person who was putting the job postings up on websites, reading the resumes, the cover letters, and scheduling interviews with candidates, making hiring decisions with partners and hiring managers. So hopefully I have some great tips for you all, everywhere from the classroom to the job search to your interviews and working in an office place. So I'm going to start out. I do have a PowerPoint today, but we're also just going to jump around and I'm going to show you some professional documents and things you should have prepared for different stages of your professional journey. So, professionalism is about behavior, communication, mindset, and judgment. So, here we're going to talk about fostering relationships, creating opportunities from the classroom through the interview process to long term workplace success. And professionalism starts here at Tulane. And I want you all to think about how you're presenting yourself when you attend class, when you're communicating with professors and staff here. The first off is things that we set up right when we start school. You're going to have an account on Canvas. Just make sure your photo is professional. I have had professors mention things to me about it, asking me, hey, can you meet with students and just remind them to have a professional photo on here? And it could be something that you just take at home up against a white wall. If you put on a jacket and a nice shirt underneath. Also, your LinkedIn is giving off your professional appearance, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And also your Zoom image. You know, when you create a Zoom account, you also have a little image similar to the one you have on Canvas. And if you walk away, if you turn your camera off, you want to make sure either it has your name professionally written or a professional photo of you as a placeholder when your video is turned off. In the classroom, certainly punctuality, but professors are looking at that. They're also making sure you're prepared and you're participating in class, and that goes for in person and online. And I do take classes here at Tulane as well. Some are in person, some are online. And just make sure when you are attending a class online, you have a background set up so there's nothing distracting anyone. If you don't have a home office and you have to be in your bedroom when you're at class, make sure you're using a background. You can even blur it so that no one's looking at what's in your room. The other thing is your attire. So I dressed up for y'all today. I put on a suit jacket. This is something that I would wear to an interview. So you want to look professional. You want to be facing the camera. You want to be attentive. Hop on. I always hop on a minute before class starts. And sometimes it gives you the opportunity to chat with the professor before everyone else hops on. And just make sure all of your communication via email and on Canvas is just professional. And that's something you can run through ChatGPT, just to double check your spelling on things, and your engagement in class. Limit your use of your personal devices. Try not to have your phone on your desk if you're in person. And if you're online, try to make sure you're having eye contact while you're in the classroom and following instructions and meeting deadlines consistently. So all of these things are going to lead you to we'll have a few story times here. At Tulane, we have something called the Tulane 34 Awards. And so our professors are looking for people, for students throughout the year that they can nominate 34 Tulane outstanding graduates, and you'll get recognized. And this is students who have demonstrated exemplary leadership, service, academic excellence. And I promise you, everything that I just mentioned goes into this decision. So you're starting off your career here. You're developing relationships with your professor, who they could end up being references for you for a potential internship or a full-time job. If you're deciding to go to law school, they can write a recommendation for you, things along those lines. So really think about how you are presenting yourself in the classroom. And while you're here, you may be applying for jobs, right? And you might be applying on Handshake or on Indeed. And I do recommend, of course, I am a career advisor. I do recommend that you meet with a career advisor to go over materials such as there's really 4 things that I feel like everyone needs to have in order. And that starts with your resume. And this is just a resume template. It's just a 1-page. And some of you might be on to 2 pages now, and that's okay, but we can talk about it. And the only secret to a resume is it has to be perfect. It is the first thing that a recruiter sees. And when I was a recruiter, there was nothing more that I loved than when I saw a great resume. I get so excited, be happy to pass it on to hiring managers. And so this is how you shine. It's a black and white piece of paper, but there are some things on here that are really important. And so you want to make sure there's consistency. If you're using dashes, they're all long dashes. The company name where you worked is always bolded. Things along those lines, just so they can see how organized you are and how you're going to do in the workplace. It's representative of your organizational skills. And so we want to put our best foot forward with our resume. And the other thing is a cover letter. When you're applying for jobs, I like for it to match your resume, and also just make it, very not too long, no bullets on a resume, just going for what you want, telling them who you are, why you're interested in the position, and what skills you have that qualify you for the job. And the third thing that I think is important to have in order when you are in that interview process is your references. Let's say you get an interview and things move quickly. You want to have 3 references ready when they say, we'd like to call your references or email them. You want to provide 3 names of people who you've worked with, professors. It can be me if we meet numerous times, and just someone who's going to sing your praises. The 4th thing that you should have in order, if you're interested in having, is LinkedIn. And so just so you know, when recruiters are looking at resumes, they do go search for people on LinkedIn. And so they are looking at your photo, they're looking at how you have your page. If your experience matches your resume, if the dates match, they're looking at all of these things. When I did hiring, we had a 4-page checklist of things we needed to review before we even called in a candidate. And one of them was looking at their LinkedIn. And so just so you know, they will be looking, and we'll talk about social media in a minute. So someone's asking if this PowerPoint will be shared after this, and yes, I will follow up with everything that we discuss. And so when you're in that job interview process, you want to make sure you are networking and you are prepared with your materials that we just talked about. So, success in your job search often means attending networking events. If you're in New Orleans, the Chamber of Commerce is awesome and they host really fun events almost once a month that I typically attend. There's free food and drinks. Tulane students can get in for free using the code Tulane, all lowercase. So anyway, it's a great way to meet people and get your foot in the door. If you aren't from here, that's okay. You never know who you're going to meet. If you're going to go live in LA after you leave here, someone you meet at this event might have a sibling who lives in LA. I do. So you never know. And so, attend virtual and in-person events. We have many that are on Handshake every day that Tulane is promoting. And so if you are on LinkedIn, make sure you connect with people at events. And even if it doesn't offer you an opportunity today, it may offer you an opportunity 10 years from now. You never know. An email etiquette when you are emailing with a recruiter and you're trying to set up a job interview, be as detailed as possible. If they ask you your availability, you want to give them as many windows of time and dates available. So let them know. If you just say, oh, I'm available on Friday at 1 o'clock, that's probably not the best response. You want to give them multiple days and times when you are available to interview, and make sure when you're communicating with a recruiter that you are letting, or definitely solidifying where the interview is taking place. Sometimes it's just a phone call for a screen interview. Sometimes it's a short Zoom for them to just meet you and then decide if they want to bring you into the office. And then other times, I just had a student recently, first interview, she went straight into the office. So sometimes it can be confusing. Well, how are we doing this? Since now we're doing it all different types of ways. So make sure you know that. And also when you're emailing with a recruiter, you want to get back to them as soon as possible. They are juggling multiple job openings and they're also trying to schedule interviews with multiple candidates. So the sooner you get back to them, the better. And it shows your enthusiasm for the position. But also send emails during business hours. Don't send emails over, at 9 p.m. It's just better to keep it during professional hours. And I can also show you all how to send an email via delayed delivery. I did it last night. I was emailing 2 students. I wrote my email last night at 11 p.m. And I didn't want to email them at 11 p.m. So I set it for delayed delivery. It went out at 9 a.m. this morning. First impressions are really important. I had a student recently who went on an interview and they commented, it was on Zoom, how his attire was so nice. Many of the other candidates didn't dress up, and they actually gave him that feedback afterwards. So there's no harm in dressing up. Even if you're going, when I worked at a tech company, our office dress code was extremely casual. But when I went in for that interview, I dressed up. There's no harm in being the most dressed up person in the room. And I had a student, we had the federal agency career fair last year on campus, and she came in and she was wearing a suit. And she was like, oh my gosh, no, none of the other students are dressed up. And a lot of the employers who were there came up to me afterwards and they were like, oh, we really appreciated that student came with copies of her resume and she wore a suit. So they are paying attention. And it's an easy thing to do, to just put on an all black suit and show up and you'll stand out. One thing that I wanted to talk about is mirroring emails. And I don't know if you all know what that means. So I made an example, and this is an actual email between a student and I. And so it started out, um, I wrote, I'm just going to call him John, like, "Hi, John, I received this email below." And then he wrote back, "Hello, Miss Della Houssaye." And he even went more formal than I did, which is impressive, wrote me a nice email. And I had my professional signature in my original email. So when he replied, he had his professional signature in his email. Even though he's a student, he made a professional signature in Handshake, and I mean in Outlook. And then when I wrote back, I went more casual with my response. I didn't say "Hi, John," and I didn't write, "Best, comma, Susan" at the end. I didn't do a closing. So I went casual and just did two sentences. And then when he replied, he mirrored what I was doing, and he didn't do an opener or a closer. I just had two sentences and my professional signature. So when he wrote back, he had a few sentences and his professional signature. So I didn't ask him to do this. This was just a few days ago, but like, he did it perfectly. He was mirroring how I started off the emails. And so when you are working with a recruiter or someone who's trying to hire you, or even when you get into an office place, the person who is above you in the office, see if they keep it formal, then you continue to keep it formal. The minute they go casual and take out the header and the closing, that's when you're clear to go casual in the email. So I hope that that makes sense. I call it mirroring emails. Social media awareness. When I was doing hiring, like I said, we looked at everyone's LinkedIn, but we also looked at their social media. So we checked their Facebook, their Instagram, their X. We checked it all. And so you want to review your profiles thoroughly. You want to make them private, and the social ones, your Facebook, your Instagram, your X, but you want to leave LinkedIn so that the recruiter can see your LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn is your professional social media, so keep that open, so that recruiters can look at it. They can see all of your experience. And, your LinkedIn shows a little bit more personality than a piece of black and white paper. So make sure that, we have professional headshots coming up after Mardi Gras. You can make a nice background for this here on Canva, sorry. And I always tell people, look at other people's profiles, see what kind of header they've used, look at their about section, and you can get ideas. I don't have every bullet from my resume on my LinkedIn. I I don't actually have that many filled out, but everything that I have is complete. And I want to make the point that it's better to have a complete profile, or none. If you have one that's kind of in the middle where you haven't really updated it, that looks worse than not having a profile at all. So make sure your LinkedIn is up to date if you have an account when you are in that job search, because recruiters are looking at it. So let's get into professionalism for the workplace. So when you're starting a job, and I'll send y'all the link to this. I listened to this book. Probably I've read the whole book and I've listened to it at least 3 times about professionalism. It was a guy who He was a career counselor at Harvard, but just kind of how he didn't have any guidance from his parents or anything. And I'll send you all the link to the book. It's really good. But in the book, he says your first 2 weeks and your last 2 weeks at your job are the most important. And I agree with him. So preparation is key. Getting ready for your first day of work, read through all the HR materials that they send you. What do you need to bring? Usually need to bring an ID, a passport. Sometimes they give you paperwork to fill out in advance. So you want to know, you want to have all that ready. And, you can, if they haven't told you, ask them what the dress code is, and they'll more than likely tell you what to bring. Um, where are you going to park? All those types of details. And when you're in that first day of, introductions and going over paperwork with HR, take notes and write down any questions. But when you start in those first 2 weeks, you're going to be in the hall. You're not going to know everyone. So introduce yourself to people. And also, sometimes at offices, there are group work emails, and maybe you're not in those group work emails yet. So ask your, colleagues and boss, hey, are there any group emails that I need to be included in or added to? Um, and look online and see if there's a chart of who's at the top and who's below them, and just kind of take note of relationships in the building, and just observe. And we're going to jump to the last 2 weeks of work, but we'll still talk about the workplace. When you are leaving a job, it's just really important for those last 2 weeks to be ultra professional. Some of the people you're working with are going to be references for you. You want to complete all of your outstanding tasks, document any key responsibilities. I've always created a document of everything I do, if there's any usernames and passwords that people need to get into any accounts. Organize your files, make sure as you're working, you're naming things so that if someone ever takes over your position, it's easy for them to find things. And then communicate all that clearly with your supervisor and colleagues on your way out. Say, this is where I saved everything. These are the most important documents. And everyone will really appreciate that. I promise you, they'll use those documents. So when you start a job, the most important thing is just observing in the beginning. It takes time to learn a new job. And I always say it takes a year to learn how to do things. And now we're back to mirroring. So, mirror the workplace culture. If everyone leaves their door open, then leave your door open. If everyone closes their door, then maybe you can close your door. Maybe not when you start, but so observe dress codes. And I'm not saying not to be yourself. If you have, a flair for style, then, show your style, but keep it professional. And I'll tell a story shortly about how you can, look at what other people are wearing, but like you're going to know the parameters of what's acceptable in the workplace and what's not. And you can always ask HR. If you see other people wearing jeans on Friday, but you've never seen an office memo about it, maybe that's something that was sent out before you started. So go ask, because a lot of times that is common. Pay attention to how colleagues interact, the social dynamics. Like I said, try to figure out roles and titles of people and be proactive in introducing yourself, and just be patient. Everyone is excited when they're starting a new job, but it typically does take a year to learn a new role. So give yourself some grace. So story time about Doc Martens. When I was working at a law firm downtown here in New Orleans, One of the partners who was really stylish, she started wearing Doc Martens with dresses to work. And that's fine. She's a partner. She can wear whatever she wants. And so then some of the associates in her group, they started doing it too, which is fine. They're mirroring their boss. And so like we would all kind of laugh about it, like, this partner wears them, so like it's, and it looked good and it was fun and they're wearing like very professional dresses, but it couldn't have happened the other way. It couldn't have been that the associates started wearing Doc Martens and then the partners started wearing Doc Martens. It comes from the top. So you want to watch what the people above you are wearing. And that was just in one practice area. Just because this one practice area had the leeway for a little bit more style to be added into their department, that doesn't mean the partners in another practice area, it's a big firm, wanted their associates wearing Doc Martens with dresses. So be mindful of what you think your bosses are going to want for your communication, your attire, and just try and mirror their actions. When you start and when you're working at a job, you always want to have, you know, questions ready. If you have a meeting set up weekly with your boss or every 2 weeks, you want to have all your questions consolidated. So you're not going to your boss's office every day and asking questions. Maybe you wait until you have your meeting every Tuesday at 2 p.m. and then you go over that list of questions. But you can keep that list on a, pad of paper, and they'll appreciate that. That's what I do. I write all mine down. I have a weekly meeting with my boss. I go in, I cover it all, and then I say, what do you have for me? I tried to come with ideas too. I thought about doing this. What do you think? And I think it helps because then it's taking a little bit of work off of my boss's plate. And if I'm also asking for permission, I'm not just going and implementing new ideas. I'm getting feedback, and they might have an even better idea than I do. If you don't have a standing weekly meeting with your boss, ask them if you can schedule meetings from time to time. Just depending on the office, maybe they tell you stop by anytime and they mean it. So you're going to have to read the room. And, some people like to get everything in writing in an email. Some would prefer to meet in person. So you have to figure out what is the best mode of communication for you with certain colleagues. And so you want to, take notes, confirm things, and, if there's any time where you're confused about something, of course, ask questions. So we'll do a story time about emails and the 2-line reply to all and delayed delivery. So I'll show you a few things. Let's see. So when you're sending an email, I'm not sure if you all know this, but when you are sending an email, typically what is best, and the rule that I follow, is the person who's at the top goes first in the 2-line. So if I'm sending an email to people at the School of Professional Advancement at Tulane, our dean's name is going to go first. After that, I'm going to have program directors, and then under that would be faculty, and then under that would be staff. So try and keep that in mind when you are sending emails. It is typical that the first person on the 2-line is at the top of the organization, and then it trickles down from there. And sometimes it's not clear. I mean, our program directors, I would say, are equal weight. and then under that, faculty and staff. So don't stress out too much from there, but I'm not going to put the dean as the last person in the to line. So just make sure you're aware of things along those lines. And I mentioned earlier delayed delivery. I love delayed delivery, and I do this all the time. I write emails late at night. I don't want to send someone an email at midnight. I don't know how they have their cell phone set up, if it pings them or anything. So I did this last night. I went in, I did a custom time. I set it for this morning at 9 a.m. Send, had whole email ready to go. And then, I went to bed feeling great because I had 2 emails set for delayed delivery for this morning. So I'd gotten a lot of work done. And then they got them at a reasonable time. The other thing I want to mention on here is sending an email with high importance. I would say, and it's this little exclamation point, set this as a high priority. I would say only use that if it's an emergency. I've seen some emails sent with high importance that they're not that important. So just kind of be careful with that. And the other thing is when you are on an email with multiple people, just be careful when you reply to all. I had there was a managing partner at one of the firms where I worked, and he actually had someone in IT move the reply to all button. Well, I'll go back to the email. If someone was responding to an email and it up here it said reply and right next to it is typically reply to all, he had in Outlook it was a big firm in New York with over 1,000 employees. He had the reply to all button moved all the way to the far right because he did not want people to reply to all. If someone sent out a company-wide email to over 1,000 people, he wanted to make sure people were not replying to all. So you can sense different pet peeves of bosses, hiring managers, anyone who's in charge. So try to just, lay low, be careful, and just think before you reply to all if it's an email with, over 100 people on it. So resourcefulness and initiative. I kind of talked about when I go to a meeting, I try to come with ideas. You also want to come to meetings with solutions, not problems. Now, certainly, if there is something you have to discuss that is an issue, you can bring it up, but maybe also have a solution for that problem already or multiple options for solutions. And when you are starting a job, you can ask, when are we going to be having reviews? And if you're not going to get reviewed until the next year on your start date, you can ask for feedback along the way. Maybe once every 3 months, you just put something in your calendar, asking your boss, am I doing everything right? Do you prefer that I email you or come to your office with questions? And they'll really appreciate that. So, think about that. One thing, recently I met someone at a New Orleans Chamber of Commerce event, and we were talking about office etiquette and gossiping at work and the way people see you at the office. And I thought this was really interesting. He told me that he never goes into someone's office unless they invite him in. So if he's going to talk to someone, he goes and stands at their door. And until they say, "Oh, do you want to come in?" then he'll go in. So he never just knocks on a door and just assumes he can walk in. And I thought that was really interesting and a great tip. And so I had to think about, well, what do I do? And so sometimes I do, I just walk right in. And now this has only been a few weeks, but I'm just trying to like just stand by the door. And maybe people are busy and they don't have a lot of time to talk. And the other thing is, if you do go into someone's office and they ask you to close the door, you know, maybe you're not comfortable with the door closed. So ask them, just say, do we have to close the door? Unless you're talking about something that is really confidential, it is better to leave the door open, because if you close the door, it just gives the impression that like you're talking about people, or if you're not in the same department and you go in and you close the door, people are wondering like, well, what are they talking about? They're not in the same department. So just be very wary of office etiquette, people's space in the office. And I thought that was a really good tip, to not go into someone's office unless you're invited to go in and have a seat in one of their chairs. And another story time is holiday party and weekend plans etiquette. When I started working, I went to an office holiday party, and I was, early 20s, and there was an open bar, and a lot of people took advantage of that. And I didn't. I just started. I was observing. I was kind of like shocked. A lot of people do look forward to the annual office holiday party, and you don't want to be that person that everyone's talking about the next day. It's okay to not drink. It's okay to have a drink and have a water. Do whatever feels comfortable to you, but just make sure you're not the one who's been served too many. And it happens at a lot of office events where alcohol is served, so just be aware of that. And also, your weekend plans. Everyone gets into the office on Monday, everyone says, how was your weekend? Try not to overshare, would be my tip. Is sometimes people give out too much information at work, and you just don't know what other people are going to say about you, or who they're going to go tell. If you tell them you were out in the French Quarter till 5 in the morning on Saturday night, it's not the best thing, especially when you just started, or even if you're trying to further your career and you're trying to get a promotion. You want to give off the appearance of professionalism inside and outside the office. And that's the way you will succeed, you will grow, you'll get promoted. So try to keep those stories and partying with other colleagues to a very minimum. Oftentimes, I don't mix colleagues with my weekends, so just be careful with that. I can be friends with someone after I've had a job with them, but it can get complicated if you mix while you're in the office. This was a really great point from the book that I'll show you all at the end. We're almost done. Is school versus workplace assignments and deadlines. So in school, assignments, instructions, deadlines are very clearly outlined in tools like Canvas, your syllabus, via email. In the workplace, instructions and timelines, they can get muddy. They can be less defined. So you have to make sure you're seeking clarification, expectations, and communicating regularly with your supervisor about anything you're working on. If something's taking longer than expected, you need to let them know. If you don't have all the details that you need to complete the assignment, but when in doubt, check in sooner than later, just to let them know so that you don't go in the wrong direction. If there's any confusion in your mind, definitely double check and try to, work on time management and balance, putting things on your calendar, what times of the day, which priorities, what tasks are a priority. And lastly, try to set yourself up for a promotion. Seek growth opportunities. If they tell you at your office you can attend a conference, take advantage of that. If there are lunch and learn seminars or webinars, any offers for you to get additional schooling or certificates while you're at your job, stay proactive and, develop new skills in whatever area of work you're in, just so you remain valuable. And they'll notice that you're trying to learn new things, trying to grow within the company and really be valuable to the company. So the goal is to build a reputation as someone who exceeds expectations. And this is the book. It's called The Unspoken Rules: Secrets to Starting Your Career Off Right, where I got some tips from. My story times are personal stories. Hope you all enjoyed those. And I will send you all a link to the PowerPoint, this recording, the book. But if you have any questions, we have 3 more minutes. You can send them in the chat, or you're welcome to follow up with me via email. So thank you all for attending, and hopefully I shared some insight into professionalism. And like I said, please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.